Um, just so y'all are aware that have joined us this evening, I'll be giving a presentation on behalf of the Planning Department. My name is Olivia Rancine, and then we'll move into the applicant's presentation, and then we'll move into Q&A. If you have any questions that pop up during my presentation or the applicants, feel free to pop them in the chat. And then when we go to the Q&A period, you can raise your hand virtually, and we'll make our best effort to call on everyone. All right. So welcome. We'll be talking about the Lincoln Tech Campus Plan Amendment. For those of you joining us, I'm sure you received the notice as you live nearby. So just some introductions. Let me see if we have Councilmember Parker with us. Yes, Councilmember Parker is with us, and planning staff, Olivia Rancine, and I'm a planner with Community Plans, and Anita McCaig will be assisting me tonight. We also have our applicant team here, John, Ben, Michael, and Shane, who will give a presentation in a few minutes. So just some background, we're going to go over the purpose of this meeting. We'll go into background information, talk about policy and zoning. Applicant will go into their presentation, and then we'll move into Q&A. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. It's really just an overview, so if you have more specific policy questions, feel free to ask those in Q&A or in the chat box. So why are we meeting? I'm sure many of you received the notice in the mail about this plan amendment. So essentially, an applicant wishes to change the land use policy for what we're calling kind of the Lincoln Tech College area. And we want to hear from you. And that's why we're having this meeting tonight. So we'll be describing the proposed changes, explaining the process, gathering your feedback, and then we'll be making a recommendation to the Planning Commission. We'll go more into depth in just a second, but this is the general area, and also show some Google images. I think I have one on the next slide. This area right here, I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. Let me zoom in. All right. So as you can see, the application area is between McClurkin, Strauss, Trevecca, and Douglas, and it covers the majority of the Nashville Lincoln Tech College campus. I think it was formerly the Gallatin Auto Diesel College. It's had a lot of names over the years. So that's the area that we're looking at. It does front Gallatin. So just some background to explain what land use planning is it's kind of wonky at times. We have 14 community plans that the planning department puts out for the county, and this plan amendment falls within the East Nashville plan. And essentially what community plans do is they guide decision making for the future built in natural environment. All right. Next slide. Another important thing to note is in community planning and land use planning, we use something called the Transect Model, which essentially just categorizes different types of land uses from something like open space, which is T1, so that's your parks, agricultural land, to something as intense as T6, which is our downtown, where you have a lot of height and a lot of buildings. The transect we'll be discussing tonight is the T4 transect, the urban transect, which covers a lot of East Nashville and our neighborhoods that are more in the core of our city. So just to go over the policy that currently exists and what's being proposed, the majority of the site is covered by something called district, I have industrial in there, district major institutional. And the proposed change is to the urban transect to neighborhood evolving on this corner right here, to urban community center, and to or an urban mixed use neighborhood. And we'll go over these in depth in just a second. All right. So the existing policy that covers the majority of the site is district major institutional. And why we've applied this here is because of the Lincoln Tech College. And institutional uses like hospitals, college campuses, universities, that's why we apply a policy. It's very general. So these are some photos on the right that provide just kind of an example. We've got Vanderbilt. I have a photo of the Lincoln Tech College, Belmont. That's typically where we apply this policy. Now the applicant is wanting to redevelop the property into something completely different from a college campus, hence why they need a policy change. So a couple items are being requested for the site. They all fall under that urban category. So one is urban community center, and that includes commercial, mixed uses, uh, institutional land uses as well. These are some examples of what are considered urban centers from across the city. There's one over in East, over off of Eastland, Hillsborough Village over here, 8th Avenue South. So this kind of gives you an idea of what an urban community center looks like in Nashville. And the idea is that they serve urban communities generally within a 5-minute drive or a 5 to 10-minute walk. They're very pedestrian friendly and highly connected. The other requested policy is urban mixed use neighborhood. And this is used to promote a variety of housing, different types of urban housing, apartments, flats, townhomes, along with commercial mixed use uses. So things like restaurants and retail. And these are supposed to be highly connected and have complete street networks with sidewalks, bikeways, and transit. And the final policy that's being requested is urban neighborhood evolving. And here are some photos of urban neighborhood evolving areas across Nashville that show different kinds of housing types. So this includes single family homes, townhouses, cottage courts, and low and mid-rise flats. Let me go back to this slide again just to emphasize. So we're taking apart what is right now district major institutional policy. And this blue area right here would be the urban mixed use neighborhood or urban community center. This would be urban community center fronting Gallatin. And over here in the white, that would be urban neighborhood evolving. Again, they all fall under that kind of general urban category, which is intended to create highly connected, walkable communities within our urban core. And before we move into the applicant's presentation, I want to provide this little infographic here. Policy and zoning can be pretty confusing and wonky. Policy basically provides a category and kind of some basic elements of an area. So like we were talking with urban neighborhood, district institutional, the policies in question here tonight are district major institutional, changing to urban neighborhood evolving, mixed use neighborhood, or community center. And again, the policies provide a guidance and vision for the area, but they are not zoning. So they are not the law at the end of the day. What policy does and what's important to know here is that policy provides recommended zoning. So that's how your community gets shaped, is through zoning, but your policy provides those recommended types of zoning in order to create, in our case, urban communities. So we'll not be covering zoning tonight. That's covered under something called a specific plan. But currently on the site, there is RM20, our residential multifamily 20, RS5, CS, and ORI. We're not going to dive into that, but the applicant is proposing a specific plan, which is essentially kind of a build your own zoning to the site. And at the end of the day, I like to call zoning kind of the genetic code of an area. It's the law. It helps control and provide guidance for the physical development of land. So that's kind of the nitty gritty, the use, the density, the height, the setbacks, parking, etc. So just one more time, we're talking about policy tonight. Policy helps guide zoning. All right, so now that I've finished that up, we're going to go into the applicant presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing. And again, feel free if you have any questions to plug them into the chat, and we will try to get around to them, and we'll move into Q&A a little later.
And Olivia, this is Ben. If you can, I don't know, I'm not able to share right now. If you can allow me to share.
All right, and passing the privileges.
All right.
There we go.
You see that? All right, good. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you, Liv. I'm Ben Crenshaw with Southern Land Company. We have a group of Southern Land people here in support, and also John Gore from our design team on the line as well. I do want to thank Councilman Parker, and also want to recognize Councilman Withers of being here tonight. We appreciate your being here. So this is after, I'm going to do a very abbreviated presentation of the presentation that we have given. I think we've given it 4 times, and we've actually gotten, we had over 100 attendees at our meetings, and we've sent this the bigger presentation out to pretty much everybody that has wanted a copy. And anybody that's here tonight that's on the line can request one from us. We'll be happy to forward it on to you as well. So this is after a pretty good amount of community outreach and a lot of feedback, good feedback from the majority of people that we've spoken with. So a little bit of, this is a little bit of distinction here. The red outline is the limits of our project. What Olivia has just shown goes beyond the area of our project. So what we've been focusing on is just within the bounds of the red dashed lines here between Gallatin, Strauss, McClurkin, Emmett, and then Trevecca traversing the property. So as she said, there is existing zoning on the property, and the blue outline is the institutional overlay. And that's what we are proposing to change. So as we do our research for any project, we look back at Nashville Next. Nashville Next is really the guiding document for this area, showing this Lincoln Tech campus as a tier 3 center, which suggests dense, urban, mixed-use, walkable, mixed housing types with good transitions into the existing neighborhood. Another part of our, again, Olivia did a good job of explaining why we're here to make sure that we're aligning the plan that we're proposing in the SP and the policy that this change would incur. So as looking at the pedestrian infrastructure, looking at the site now, digging into what we actually have, you see a lot of parking spaces. We think there are a little over 600 parking spaces on the site now, and the green lines are where the pedestrian infrastructure is. Very little pedestrian infrastructure. And then the walk and bike Nashville plan of 2022 suggests a connection along McClurkin as a priority network, and then there are very little bike lanes as well. So we see there might be an opportunity there. Open space in East Nashville, this is the red, is the project location, and the small dotted line is a 10-minute walking circle, and the larger outline is a 20-minute walking circle. So you can see Eastland Park is relatively close, but other than that, there's really not much open space within this area. And then the existing conditions, anybody that lives over here has been over in East Nashville and seen the Nashville Tech campus, kind of really understands where we are today. And I will say that that Nashville Tech is ready to move. That's sort of the bottom line, is that they think that this is a useful campus for them. It's sort of outlived its life, and they are looking to move. And so we've struck a deal to propose this project that we're proposing now. So some more of the existing conditions around the site: no pedestrian infrastructure, no sidewalks, no street trees, no street lights, kind of where you can't even get in or can't even see what's going on the campus. And then at night, everybody kind of knows what this looks like. So we have a vision for the project, and to start to weave together some of those things that we don't have. We don't have open space. We don't have public open space. We don't have a lot of places to gather as a community. We don't have a lot of sidewalks. So this idea of creating an artful heart of East Nashville that's described as walkable, historic, vintage, communal, comfortable, respectful, that's really where we're coming at this project from. And so we start with the laying out of the open spaces, and where does that open space go? If we're going to create an artful heart, the heart needs to be in the center of the project. So this graphic represents open spaces. The green or the light green are the public open spaces, and the dark green are where we would see the private open spaces. But there's a significant amount of open space through the site, connecting Emmett and Trevecca to be completely out of your car and be able to walk through the sort of the very pedestrian oriented space. And then this very well scaled space here in the middle to be able to allow us many different opportunities for a very public open space. Then we start thinking about where is commercial viability. That's the red lines here. We see some viability, and we don't know where we're not merchandising this yet. We don't know exactly where those are, what tenants will go into these spaces. But seeing this as a great opportunity to activate, to have great kind of people spaces, places to have a cocktail and watch what people are doing in the open space, or a concert that we might put on. And then we think there also is the opportunity to do live work units kind of in these dashed areas where retail viability might not be the best because of the configuration of the building, but we do think that there might be some opportunities for live work on those levels. And then layering in the sidewalks and how to make connections through the site, and really emphasizing pedestrian connectivity and less dependence on your car. So to be able to get out of your car and to be able to walk through the whole neighborhood, through the whole project is a real priority of ours. And to build a great project, you got to build it with great streets. And so these are neighborhood streets with a minimum 5 foot wide sidewalk, 4 foot planting zone, and then on-street parking. And then we get to our commercial street that's a little bit wider, 8 feet, with a 4 foot planting zone to really allow that comfortable feeling walking down the street. And you can imagine kind of these active street fronts where we have outdoor dining or shop fronts along this outside edge. And then Gallatin Road, the Metro classifies this as a corridor in need of help. And so as part of what we're proposing here is a 10 foot wide sidewalk, a 4 foot wide planting zone, and then that we would be expanding the or we would be donating right of way to be able to expand the road in the future. But in the interim, that we would plant that there and make a much more comfortable and much more beautiful sidewalk. So the plan that we're proposing, I'll start with and this is the plan that we're proposing. So we have Emmett, Strauss, McClurkin, Trevecca, and Gallatin Avenue. And so you see the smaller buildings are on the outside edge. We're proposing, again, it gets back to that idea of transitions, that much smaller buildings, we're seeing for sale townhomes are on this outside edge, that we see a mixed use building here, this multifamily apartments with retail on the ground level, framing this great open space. Moving the Renraw house that is on site, moving it up to the corner, we think that there's a real opportunity here to start to engage the street and engage the neighborhood with the house. Whereas now it's set back off of the street and it's really kind of unapproachable the way it sits right now. So our proposal is to push it up to the corner. This is a multifamily building here, again, with live work along Gallatin and commercial on the ground level around this outside edge. Live work building here that is a transition into the neighborhood. And then these would be mixed use buildings where we see the possibility of office or residential in this building with ground floor commercial. And then these would be apartments lining the parking garage here and an office building that's sitting here. These are kind of placeholders. As part of the Lincoln Tech property, they do own these parcels across Strauss. And so we're putting in 2 residential units per lot in this area. We think we can do something creative with it, but as of now, we don't have very specific plans as to what to do. So when we start looking at the massing of the buildings, this is an image looking from Trevecca into the site. You see this, again, it's this idea of stepping up the 3 stories, 4 stories, 5 stories. This is a 7-story piece of this building, but then it steps back down. We think that the height is appropriate in this spot in the plan because the topography goes down, but also that we feel like that a 5-story height along Gallatin is more appropriate, and that this starts to really scale that open space well. This is a closer view of the park. Here we're proposing that we it's something that we do as a company, Southern Land. We're a Nashville-based company. We spend a lot of times with our project, and the idea of events and concerts and um, is a major portion of our design philosophy. And so we're setting this park up to be able to really cater to those events that start to bring the community together. We see this as an opportunity on event days, not every day, but on event days that we might have food trucks and shut down Trevecca, and it really becomes kind of a festival street here. Another view looking back along Strauss and Emmett, this is stepping up, the townhome stepping up to 4 stories and then 5 and then 7 looking down Strauss. So the overall, last one is looking from the corner of Gallatin Road and McClurkin. This is the multifamily building. This is a parking garage, and we see the opportunity here that this is unlined, meaning there are no uses on the outside edge of that parking garage. But we really see it as an opportunity to do something really interesting. That this is the light, the traffic light at McClurkin and Gallatin. We see the opportunity to do something really interesting here with the community to start to bring in the history of either the Renraw neighborhood, the Nashville Auto Diesel College has been there for 100 years. We think that there's a real opportunity to do something interesting and really in partnership with the neighborhood there that starts to serve as a gateway to the neighborhood. The last image is how we start to think about the house moving in to this corner and starting to we see this opportunity to do a great brew pub or a coffee shop or a restaurant here that starts to take advantage of this great porch and the porte cochere here, that we have a great kind of use that feels really good as a transition from the single family neighborhood across the street to the townhomes, and really starts to give us an opportunity to interpret the history, to bring that history out to the street and make it a real participant in the neighborhood. You start to get a peek of how we think this open space can move through this building in the background and really start to connect this pedestrian spine that runs east and west through the site with the major open spaces here. So there's a real kind of progression of the open spaces from very public and very open, very active, meaning outdoor dining and all and encouraging people to walk up and down the street, and these really more quiet neighborhood-centered open spaces that are organizing the site. So when we look at heights, we see 3 stories around the outside, 4 stories that first next ring in, 5 stories on this apartment building with 7 stories just right through here. That this office building would be 4 stories. The apartments lining the parking garage would be 5. This is sort of an office and or residential building at 5 stories. And then this building here at 5 stories as well. And then the live works on this side as 4 stories. So I'll go back to, I'll kind of leave it up to on the plan and let everybody take a look at that again. But I believe I'm really close to my 10 minutes, so Olivia's going to cut me off anyway. So we're
You
here.
have a couple minutes if you need
Okay.
them, Ben.
Well, that's really it, Olivia, and we're here to answer any questions. Again, we have a longer presentation that we've sent out to the community, to anybody that wants it. You can contact me or Southern Land Company, and we'll be happy to forward that along.
Yeah, Ben, will you just put your contact info into the chat box so that
I will
folks
do
know
that.
who to email?
Yep,
That would be great.
and I'll stop
Um,
sharing now.
all right.
Let's see if I
Um,
figure out how to do
and it's okay if you want to keep this up. Folks
that.
might
Okay.
have questions. Uh, all right. Well, I just want to also recognize, I know we have council members Parker and Withers here tonight. And before we get started with questions, council members Withers or Parker, do you have anything that you would like to say before we move into questions? All right. I think we'll move into questions, and if something comes up, let me know. Um, okay, I saw earlier, and Sade, let me know if I'm wrong. I think I saw someone with their hand raised earlier. I think it was maybe Amanda. I don't see it anymore.
There are currently no hands raised at this time.
Okay. Well, I will encourage everyone to, if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. There's a little raise hand icon. Or alternatively, feel free to put a question into the chat if you prefer to write your message instead of speaking it. Also, if you're confused about the raise hand function, feel free to just plug your question in the chat or say that you want to speak. Councilmember Withers, I see that your hand is raised.
Well, thank you, Olivia, and thank you to the Southern Land team. I know I had received a briefing from Southern Land a little bit earlier on in the process. There were some community meetings that I had conflicts with, so I'm glad I'm able to participate in this one. I guess, there was an article that was published that gave me a little bit of pause about this project, and specifically, it came out in the scene. And I know that sometimes an article, you can have a lot of conversation, and a particular line or two is what makes it to the article. And then also, sometimes even the journalist isn't the one who writes the headline. But what gave me a little bit of pause about it was the title of the article was that lacking infrastructure and transit push retail off of Nashville's thoroughfares. And there was a quote in there that stated that the team did not think that there was a lot of commercial viability along Gallatin. And both of those gave me pause for a couple of reasons. And that's why I wanted to take this opportunity for a little bit of a refresh. One is that we do have plans to, at a minimum, increase the bus service and infrastructure along Gallatin. We do have a lot of Vision Zero plans to make Gallatin better. I personally live 4 doors from Gallatin, just a few blocks south of here, and I walk it a lot of times. And it's definitely is true that, there is a lot of traffic. Getting safely across the street can be very difficult sometimes. But at the same time, having lived there so long ago that I remember the old institutional overlay that Auto Diesel had hoped to build. At the same time, I have to say that it's dramatically better than it was even a few years ago. We do have lots and lots of small businesses, and especially restaurant and retail businesses that have opened on Gallatin in just the last couple of years. And so I really want to kind of push back a little bit on a general idea that commercial viability on Gallatin is not viable, just because we do have so many businesses that are opening. I think even Colonel's, which is right north of this site, has a little patio outside, right? So lots and lots of businesses are taking advantage of patio space along Gallatin. And I guess what gives me pause is the sense that it is better to pull retail and things like that off of Gallatin than to support it on Gallatin. What I see on your plan again today is that at least at the corner nodes, and particularly there along Strauss Avenue, it sounds like you would you would have that along Gallatin, at least at that node, and maybe draw it into the neighborhood, which I think is fine. But just wanted to kind of talk through that a little bit about how the plan sort of continues to support some of the things that are sprouting all along Gallatin to the north and to the south of the site immediately, and maybe enhances that rather than pulling it off of Gallatin in a way that would almost make it a private environment.
I'll be happy to address that because I shared.
Mr. Crenshaw, if you, I'll speak to it as soon as you're done as well. This is Councilmember Parker. I was disconnected from the call there for a minute.
So, Councilman Parker, if you wanted to speak to that issue, feel free. I'll defer to you, and I'll follow up after that.
Yeah, and thank you, Ben. And sorry that I got cut off there for a second. I was trying to transition over to my laptop from my phone, and it did not work out. So I'm back here on my phone. And thank you, Councilman Withers, for the comments about Gallatin. I mean, I see really it's kind of a, I don't see this. I know it was termed on social media or something as turning the back to the corridor. I don't see that this way. That stretch of Gallatin sees about 25,000 car trips a day. There's great visibility for any businesses there. But the kind of, I don't know, plaza scale activation that I see envisioned in this plan, I really think that belongs, not necessarily on a 25,000 average annual daily trip corridor. And so I'm excited to see, some activation and of course commercial on Gallatin, but also to kind of have this, I don't know, more like comparable vibe to say 5 Points or something. I don't envision this as a walled garden. I do think that they've really kind of envisioned a inviting, publicly accessible space that's kind of trying to integrate with the neighborhood here. So I think that we can kind of do both and in supporting the corridor and kind of providing a new type of publicly accessible commercial space here. Thank you, Ben, if you want to pick it up.
Well, you took a lot of words out of my mouth, Councilman Parker. I think that is pretty much how we would approach it as well. And we don't, and that, I think that headline was unfortunate, and that was not the intent of what we were trying to present, and what I think is seen in the plan. Because I brought this graphic up because if we think we have about 125,000 square feet of commercial space, ground floor commercial space. So that's a pretty significant amount. And so we feel like that there is great viability for commercial, but we also know that we do our own in-house commercial leasing. And we also know that we spend a lot of time working through where those best, the position, the uses that we see, those outdoor dining, that restaurant, those walkable spaces, where those would go. And so what you see is if we didn't think that there was some commercial viability along Gallatin, we wouldn't have any of this red there. That's where we see that viability happening. We think that from this mid-block area, it might be challenging. And so from our perspective, unleased retail is a huge negative to a project. And so we have to be very careful about where we want to propose retail. And so we do want active ground floor uses. So where we see this as a great sort of live work pushed off a little bit, but if a new shop front happens there that we didn't think was going to and they're viable, then that's fantastic. But if it turns out to be somebody's artist studio or a small architecture shop or whatever it is, that's still a better use on the ground level. So we do see that neighborhood kind of scale use of retail and that walkability. So I think that was an unfortunate headline, and it got attention, but I don't think that's really our intent. In that our intent is to concentrate, if we do have a certain amount of retail, to create this great space. And one of the reference projects is maybe the one right across the street from us is Hill Center Green Hills, where they do have retail on the outside along Hillsborough Road, but really in order to create that great walkable environment, it's pulled off and it's perpendicular to Hillsborough Road. And so if you have that kind of picture in your mind of those kind of spaces and that kind of retail, that's what we're really, really encouraged about.
Okay, yeah, I mean, thank you for that. And like I said, the article was a little bit different than my recollection had been, and so I'm glad to have an opportunity to check back in on how things have been going. But appreciate that.
All right, we're gonna move into someone with their hand raised. I believe Diana has had her hand raised for a bit now, and then I'll move to a couple questions that were in the chat. Just to remind everyone, I'm checking both the chat and the Q&A. Feel free to put questions in either, whichever one is easiest for you to access, and feel free to raise your hand. All right, we'll move into Diana.
Thank you, Olivia. Good evening. In fairness, I want to let you know who I am. My name is Diana Alarcon. I'm actually the director over the Department of Transportation Multimodal Infrastructure, but I'm also a neighbor to you. So I actually live directly across the street right off of Chester. So this development does directly affect me. I'm super excited about seeing the setbacks on Gallatin for the major retail space where you have the garage. I'm curious, are you doing the same amount of setback for the development pieces further to the south as well. That allows for us to look at expansion of the roadway in a future date to support transit operations, because our Gallatin ridership is growing pretty quickly. So we want to make sure that we actually can support that as our city grows. And I have a couple more other questions, and I apologize. I just moved in, so this is all very new to me.
Well, thank you for being here tonight. We are still sort of in negotiations. We're in discussions with NDOT along, and I'm thinking that you're saying along Gallatin Avenue, right? Yes, we're still in discussions, but we do think that we have our setbacks that will at least accommodate, I believe it's that 7-foot expansion of the right of way from one end, from all the way from McClurkin and all the way to the end of our project.
So Ben, who are you in negotiations with at NDOT?
I say negotiations, that's probably a strong word. Discussions is the right word probably. And John Gore, who is on the line, has spearheaded our efforts with NDOT.
Yeah.
So John, who have you been talking to over at NDOT?
A couple people. So we are working through the preliminary SP process. So our TIS is in to NDOT, and Matt is reviewing that. And then our preliminary SP plans are in. And I believe that somebody else in Devin's group is reviewing the actual plans. But to clarify, the right-of-way dedications we are showing now are based on the MCSP, required right-of-way dedications that are coming from the community transportation plans. I think the question we sometimes get into is when we're dedicating a wider right-of-way kind of day one, the question is, what do you use that space for? Is it there for a bus pull off and a transit stop, or is it a wider grass strip in the short term? So your folks are reviewing those plans right now, but I think they'll find that the right-of-way dedications shown are what they're asking for on the community transportation plans.
Okay, super. I'll follow up with the team just to verify all that. So a couple other questions that I have. Being that that my husband and I actually walk this area pretty significantly. Have you gotten into discussions about what it looks like from a walkable perspective, connecting the outer communities, not just on the east side of Gallatin, but also to the north, south, and west side of this development piece? We walk this area quite frequently, and so there's a lot of opportunities for that connectivity, and I just want to know what y'all's thought has been on that connection.
Sure. The TIS has got about a dozen different improvements that are being reviewed by your folks right now, and about half of those are crosswalk enhancements, ramps and detectable warnings, that sort of thing, pedestrian signal enhancements and things like that. So I can get you the whole list, but the improvements are not centered just around our buildings and the interior of our site. They kind of reach up and down Gallatin and across the Gallatin, and are focused on kind of connecting the sidewalk network as well as possible from all four sides.
Yeah, because Emmett Avenue is used as a cut-through street quite often for many different of the communities around there, not just my community, but also the ones that are a little bit further north to avoid the stoplight there at the corner of Douglas and Gallatin. So that's why I asked what that looks like, because I want to really make sure that we're designing to a very walkable community so that we can encourage people to use that, especially since you're bringing in a development piece that's going to attract business. We really want the community to feel engaged, to be safe to walk versus needing to get in a car. And my last question, because I think of all modes, is how are you building out the bicycle facilities to this so that you can encourage people to use their bicycles to get here? And I know that this is a really important piece to Councilmember Parker. Sorry about all of this. I apologize, but I'm really coming in at the back end of it.
No, and that's completely fine. And I'll address the bike question. What we don't want to do is build roads that are too wide. And so right now, I'll go back to I'll just talk about these street sections. Right now, we pretty much have on-street parking kind of all the way around. And some of the discussions that we've had with some of the people that came to the community meetings expressed the same concerns. And so one of the things that we're studying is where we might replace that on-street parking with a bike lane. And so it's just something that we're studying right now, because we do believe, and as I said to start with, we have a much longer presentation where we talk a lot more about pedestrian connectivity and the improvements of the pedestrian facilities. We are absolutely committed to multimodal transportation, and so I think I don't have any strong commitment to say we're going to have a bike lane all up and down Strauss right now, because we're not ready to make that change just yet. But it's something that we're studying, the possibility of removing some of the on-street parking to allow for that bike lane. I'm a cyclist myself, and I get really nervous riding past parked cars. And so it's something on our list to study as our plan evolves.
Is that included in the traffic impact study?
It is not.
Okay. Something we need to go back and add then. And especially along the back street, which I think is Emmett Avenue. We should really look at what that looks and feels like for a bike facility that will provide connections in the community, because that goes further up north, and that's a really good connection point as well. And I know there's another development further up north, so there's some really great opportunities with that when I'm looking at the big picture and being very holistic about it all. I have one last question. I'm really sorry to take up so much time, and again, I apologize. I know I'm coming in late to this, but I'm super excited that I got the invite to this. I'm just curious about if you could give me a breakdown of the land use with this particular development piece. How much is commercial? How much you have planned for retail, residential? How much for restaurants? Just so I can understand exactly what I feel the impacts might be to the area community.
So as part of I'll just go down the stats. Residential, it's about 800 apartment units and 150 for sale townhomes that we've said that we will not allow short-term rentals on. About 150,000 square feet of office and 125,000 square feet of retail commercial. So we don't know. We're very premature to say that we know where restaurants are going to be, what other commercial uses they are. But those are the stats for right now.
Okay, that raised a couple other questions for me. Sorry about that. So that's roughly around 2,000 plus trips that are coming to it. Is that what y'all are basing your TSI on? Or TIS? Traffic impact study, sorry. TIS on? Do you know?
I do not have it in front of me. But I think that we could have, we're not shy about sharing the traffic study.
No, I can get my hands on it. That's not a problem.
Right, I don't know right off.
Okay.
Right
And
off.
so,
but what I do know is that we have, as John said, we have improvements that we need to make to signals. We're adding a turn lane to Tribeca if we can, a right turn lane, a right turn lane out of Strauss onto Gallatin, and making some pretty significant pedestrian improvements. But the traffic analysis did not suggest that we needed to make significant improvements to the road network.
okay. Including a Gallatin, other than that, which you just mentioned, which really does go against complete street initiatives. So I'm not a big fan of right turn lane. We're trying to improve the pedestrian experience. So I'll get a hold of the traffic impact study and take a look at it myself. And then what y'all put in for as far as the development pieces. Of the residential, one last question. Is that a lot of the 800 units? Are you planning on 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom, studios, 3 bedrooms?
A mix of pretty much all of the above. We're not quite there yet to be able to say what kind of the mix would be.
So it's kind of hard to say what the trips would be generated from a car perspective if you haven't determined the number of bedrooms that would be built in the 800 units.
No, we had given some assumptions that are in the traffic study to our engineers. And so, yeah, we you have to make some assumptions to begin with. And we've done this a lot in many different places. And so our assumptions that we put in the traffic study are not going to vary too far off of what we'll ultimately build. But again, we're going to be capped at the 800 units that we're asking for.
Perfect. And then one last question, and I promise I'll stop taking up the time. And I apologize, but this is new to me, but I am excited about this project. But I would like to understand, what is your plans about moving pedestrian bicycle traffic across Gallatin Avenue?
Ben, I'll take that. You know,
Yeah.
like I say, there's about a dozen different traffic improvements proposed, and what I'm gonna send you, Director Alarcon, after the meeting is the study itself, but then some exhibits that talk about the different intersections and how some of it's based on enhancing the signal timing at the different intersections. Some of it is based on modifying the pedestrian crossing signals, I think at McCurkin and Chester, and then also at Straightway. So it analyzed about 8 intersections around the site, and it's really different. It's really different improvements at each one, just kind of depending on what they
Hey,
felt.
John, did y'all go further north and south on Gallatin as well and look at the traffic signalization that needed to be improved, such as Cahell and further south of south of Straightway?
Yeah, the signal timing piece of it from the scoping meeting with your staff talked about going, I think, 3 signals up and looking at the signal timing
Okay, great.
across, just to, like I say, work on optimizing the 5 or 6 signals just kind of up and down Gallatin here. So I think that your staff is still looking at that and exactly which ones need to be included in the optimization and the timings, which is going to be tied to our approvals. So I'm not sure if they're done with that, but we should be getting comments from your staff soon. It's been in for several weeks, and so we're expecting some feedback soon. But I'll send you the TIS directly so you've got it.
Yo, thank you. That'd be great. I'm so sorry to take up too much time. I'm going to shut up. Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all giving me the grace.
Thank you, Director.
Please, Diana.
Diana, this is Councilmember Parker. I'm always a little bit, it's difficult to know when it's appropriate to jump in, but I did want to follow up on a couple of things that were just discussed with the transportation specific stuff. And it's so awesome to have the Director of NDOT here attending this meeting. So thank you so much for being here. The bike network specifically, I mean, there is, as you probably know, a separated bike lane on Douglas in this area, but it's sort of, there's 2, I would call, very high stress nodes for that bike lane. One being the Ellington interchange, and then the other being the Gallatin intersection. So, you know, I'm not sure if we'll be able to, how much to the extent we'll be able to address those with this project, but you know, there are east-west facilities in place. They just have these sort of 2 very high-stress nodes. And looking at the right-of-way dedication on Gallatin, taking into account future transit improvements or expansion for other reasons, I just wanted to, you know, there's another situation I'm working with where there was some right-of-way dedicated for some townhomes, and we were looking at doing an improvement that, you know, would really kind of gobble up what I think for some fairly recently built stuff, what people have kind of become used to having as their stoops. And, you know, I thought that was super unfortunate. So I guess finding a way to utilize that space that is dedicated, but not in a way that, you know, feels empty or dead, but that, you know, people are not going to say, oh no, we're losing our fancy bus stop, you know, or we're losing our little area that we like for whatever thing, you know. So just finding, I know that's tough, and that's a tough question to answer, but I do appreciate y'all for looking into it, and hope to hear more thoughts from the team on that. And then the last thing that I wanted to go,
Councilmember Parker, I'm sorry. We should, as part of this project though, since you mentioned the pinch points, especially at Douglas and Gallatin on the bike facility, we should look at how we can improve that through the signal timing with this project.
Yeah, I mean, I one of the first things I did was put a signalization request in the CIB for the Douglas interchange, and I would love to talk with you about that sometime, and why that's something worth looking at. And the last thing that I wanted to just make a note of, because we were talking about the major and collector street plan and what right-of-way dedications are called for here, while we've got you here, Diana, you know, if you go look at the MCSP right now, it still has this sort of, we're going to build light rail design through Gallatin. And, you know, I would love for there to be a light rail up and down Gallatin, but, you know, that referendum did fail. And so I would love to see an update to the MCSP for Gallatin that, you know, did not reflect a 10-figure unfunded investment such as light rail. So kind of, you know, what is the nearer term, the lower hanging fruit version of a brighter, better Gallatin? I'd love to see an MCSP update if we can take a look at that sometime.
Yes, sir. I agree with you 100% on that.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you both. We're going to move into a couple of questions that were in the chat. And again, feel free to raise your hand. I think the first person we heard from was Carrie, and she had two parts of her question. So the first part was, I'd like to know of any efforts to ensure that this is an intergenerational development. How will you ensure that it's accessible and available to younger and older Nashvillians? Further, will there be a percentage of residential units that are dedicated as affordable housing? And the second part is she wanted to know about the short-term rental technicality. She said it won't be available for the 150 homes as stated. What about the other 800 units? So the first question was about intergenerational living and affordability. Second was about short-term rentals.
I'll kind of go backwards from your order. As far as the short-term rentals and the multifamily, typically we limit our leases to no shorter than 30 days. I can't say today that we have a strategy that we are going to implement short-term rentals in the multifamily or not. We don't typically do it. We manage our buildings kind of across the country. We do our own property management, and it's just not something that we like to do. There's really no benefit. We're here to try to build a community. But again, I can't say today that we're definitively not doing, but we just really don't like to do it because it doesn't bring that community feel to our project. So as of today, we really don't think that we're going to have them in the multifamily. As far as intergenerational communities, that's something that we, especially in our master plan communities kind of across the country, is something that we really have seen a great benefit of. To be able to have grandparents in the same neighborhood as their grandchildren is a really big builder of community. What we're doing specifically here, we're offering 4 different housing types: townhomes, live-works, and apartments. We're playing with the idea of a condominium as well as a for sale in the multifamily buildings. But we think that there's a way to address, and again, affordable housing is not a part of our proposal right now. But we do feel like that a diversity of housing within a project helps to really kind of create that community that we're striving for, to allow different types of people within different income brackets to be able to live in the same community is a goal for us. And so we're addressing it from a housing diversity standpoint and not restricting affordability. And also in this project is a little bit unique. It's a little over 16 acres, and we're not displacing a single resident. As far as other projects in East Nashville go, that's not, nobody can really say that. So this is a completely different dynamic than in a lot of other projects in East Nashville.
Thank you, Ben. All right. The next question that I have is, sorry, this can be a little wonky sometimes. All right. From Amanda, she said, oh, I think it was just a comment about businesses being near Gallatin. William asked, do you see this project increasing traffic on Douglas? It can be a challenge during rush hour, and as an active cyclist, it's already a fairly dangerous road to cycle on.
We actually have an item on our list to study with our traffic engineers because there has been some concern expressed about Douglas. There will be an increase in traffic generated by this project. That's just the bottom line. There is a significant amount of traffic now. You saw all of those cars that are parked on the surface lots. Those all come and go every day, pretty much. There are very few cars parked overnight on the Lincoln Tech campus. So there is a pretty significant amount of traffic being generated by the uses there today. So there will be an increase in traffic, but as John said, the optimization of the signals along Gallatin and the possibility of a right-hand turn lane on Trevecca onto Douglas were the only two improvements. I think there are some pedestrian signalization improvements along at Gallatin and Douglas. But other than that, there were no improvements required by the traffic study.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, our next question is from Juliana. She asked, if approved, is there any timeline on when this might break ground and when it may be completed, accounting for construction time?
So we've been asked that question a lot. I think we would want to get started as soon as we could. Lincoln Tech is going to have a little bit of time, and we're negotiating with them a little bit of time to find a new campus. They've been in a search for the new campus, but to be able to sort of evacuate their everything that they have on the campus onto their new campus is going to take a little while. But once we get started under construction, we want to go as quickly as possible. And so we don't have any interest in prolonging construction zones for the neighborhood of the people that live around there currently, but also the tenants and new neighbors we're trying to attract. And so we want to move as quickly as we possibly can through here, but that's a very difficult question to answer. If everything went absolutely smoothly, it would be about 4 years of construction. But we've been in this business for a very long time, and I can't think of a time in 25 years when things have gone exactly the way they were supposed to go. So we will phase the project. We will build one building at the time, and we might start them relatively close together, but it won't be built all at once, and we will be kind of moving from one side to the other. We've got a lot of experience in very urban locations on how to manage construction traffic and traffic so that the neighborhood is as minimal of a disruption as we possibly can make. But the reality is, it will take at least 4 years to build a project like this. And it's going to take us a little while, probably towards the end of next year at the very earliest, to be able to start in construction. And so I think that's about the timeline.
Thanks, Ben. We have a question from Robert. He says, has expanding the sidewalk system on the other side of Gallatin Avenue and in the surrounding residential streets been considered as community benefits this project could provide?
It has. We have had discussions, but we have no firm plans right now.
Okay. He also asks, will you be providing and/or supporting childcare on the site?
That's a new question, and I don't know. Is the only answer I can give you right now. We don't have any plans for. We don't have any plans for leasing any of the commercial space at this point. So I don't know is the answer. If there is a lot of demand, which we actually heard this several times, and there's a great tenant that helps with the community, we'll be all ears.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Are there any other questions? Feel free to pop them into the chat, the Q&A. I'm monitoring both. If not, we might start to wrap up. Ben, would you mind stopping sharing your screen? I'm just going to show my contact info so everyone has it. I also think, yes. Oh, we have a couple questions that just popped up. Dakota asks, is there a plan for the dorm on Douglas Avenue?
That is, I'll make sure. I can't tell if I'm muted or not. No.
You're not. Okay.
That is not a part of this project.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
while I think Lincoln Tech leases that, it is not a part of the land that they own. So it's not a part of our project.
Yeah, it's so, Dakota, just for clarification there, um, or the plan amendment does include the dorm area just to change it over from that kind of college institutional policy into more of the urban policy to match the rest of East Nashville. So that's why it's included on that original map, but it's not within the specific plan that Ben and his team has shown tonight. And let me see, we've got a couple. Juliana has another question. What is left for the project to get approved? So just on our end, and then Ben can give some developer speak on this. We first is the community plan amendment and the specific plan. So for the community plan amendment, our date to present to the Planning Commission is tentatively October 27th. And then what will need to happen after that is for the specific plan for the site to get approved. Specific plans, just for help everyone understand, because they're pretty wonky. It's kind of what Ben showed tonight. It's a schematic and clear ideas about what the site will include that creates its own zoning. It's very common across Nashville. It's called design-based zoning. So that would need to get approved. And how that works is it would first go to our planning commission. If it's approved there, it would go to city council and would be heard 3 times. And then there would be additional, of course, conversations and approvals. But those are kind of the 2 main processes that we've talked about tonight. Is there anything I missed, Ben?
No, I think you did a good job.
All
I
right.
think the SP, we have turned in the SP. We were awaiting comments from the planning staff, and we feel like we'll be a couple of weeks behind the policy amendment at the planning commission.
Um, Excellent. So again, the Planning Commission tentative date for this kind of overall land use change, which is the subject of tonight's meeting, is October 27th. That is subject to change. So you can always check our site development tracker, which was included on the notice. And you can also email me for updates. My email address is right there. I'll also plug it into the chat, or you can give me a call at my office number. Let me make sure we've hit on every questions. Let me see. And council members, is there anything else that you would like to say before we finish the meeting?
Councilmember Parker here. No, I just want to thank everybody who attended and asked great questions, and thanks to planning staff for putting this together and the developers for being here to answer questions.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you all for attending tonight. And again, if you have any questions, let me just plug this into the chat real fast. Feel free to send me an email, and I can direct you to whatever information you're looking for. Again, if you have any feedback, feel free to email it to me if you didn't want to speak tonight or you need some time to think about things and marinate on them, as I often do. Feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. I think we had one last question from Diana. I think her question was, has the Nashville Department of Transportation signed off on the TIS? Oh, that is me. The question is to me. And we're still working on the TIS. So that's the traffic study, which we do for many large scale projects in town, just for folks to understand. All right. Well, we will finish up. Again, feel free to send me an email or give me a call. Tentative date for Planning Commission is October 27th, so make sure to give me a call or shoot me an email before that date. Thanks for everyone for attending tonight. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Olivia.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sade. I appreciate it.
No problem.
You're the best. Can you send me just when you get a chance tomorrow or the next couple of days, can you just send me a copy of the